building the Global Educational Pact. It was, and we used appreciative inquiry as a method for this seminar with Miriam Subiran, a specialist in this method, with a large group of collaborators from all countries. If you 700 people participated in 4 different languages. On the one hand, we looked at all the aspects that we believe are positive to work at this pact. We also shared dreams. We made our statements for the future. Where do we think we want to go with this appreciative inquiry to respond to the pact? Everything will be published very soon. It'll be published, including the conclusions and the findings. My impression was that it helped all the participants to really feel that the pact is not just desirable, but also possible. And it consists essentially in working together. I think it's enriching. I see some faces here that participated. And I think we have to go into this in this direction, follow this line to rebuild this pact. This is my summary, Patricia. Great. Thank you, Pedro. It was truly a very rich and enriching time. We know that there were people who participated in the seminar who are here now. The Pope also sent us a message that is published on the UISG webpage. You can read it in several languages. And as Pedro was saying, we're going to upload some videos, but we need some time because most of the seminar was done in groups, so you can't record nor share. But we had some plenary moments that were very important, and we can share the videos, especially the presentation of the method, as Pedro said, the method of appreciative inquiry that has a quite long and engaged history. It's a very practical methodology. It's very concrete. Also, today we've received the contribution of Monsignor Zani, the subsecretary of the dicastery. We are working at the translation. It will be uploaded as well. It is worth reading this presentation. It is very specific, but it explains this global educational pact. It's a summary of what the Pope intends with this proposal. We're trying to translate whatever we can, so this is going to require some time. Juan Antonio, perhaps we have 1 minute so you can at least show the book and say something that you will not say later. Unmute your microphone. You didn't have your book on hand. Here it is. Juan Antonio, your microphone, you have to unmute yourself. I was going to show you this book has been published, but there are very few hard copies. The essential thing is that it's being distributed online and it can be downloaded. I think that here at the UISG, on the UISG webpage, you will find it. It's located also and the OIEC page. It was a book written within 3 months with contributions from March to June in the middle of the pandemic. So it was quite challenging to gather all the testimonies, but it's very enriching. We did not start from scratch with regard to the pact. We've been headed in this direction for many years. The Pope has driven it very strongly. He's given it a more global view. The most enriching part of this book is that it provides lights, it's inspiring, and these can give us tools to contextualize and find the most appropriate lights that need to be analyzed. And what's more important is that of those 4 pillars to learn to do things, learn to be, learn to coexist, almost all these issues indicate that what is most important is to learn to be good people, teach the children to also learn to coexist. In class, we have them seated, quiet, in silence. We expect them to respect each other and cohabitate, but we do not do this. I think there is a very big gap between what we say and what we do. And they all insist on what Pedro was pointing out, that is, it is very important to work in a collaborative fashion amongst us and with the others, Catholics and non Catholics. And then I will elaborate further. Yes, then we will get all the details. What I mean to say is that this is a multilingual text. The presentations are in the original language, and there are several languages: Portuguese, French, Italian, Spanish. It's very long, it's thick. This represents the incredible experience that religious life has in the field of education. So it makes us very happy. I think we can begin, and as since other people will be checking in, I'd like to show the video that we also showed
Ufficial
on
del
the
Global Compact.
official page of the Global Pact on Education. Let's listen to the Pope. I think that the video is in Italian with subtitles in English. So all those who speak Spanish have to select the icon for translation to listen to Mary Lou, who will help us understand what they say.
L'educazione è soprattutto una questione di amore e di responsabilità che si trasmette nel tempo di generazione in generazione. Riteniamo che sia questo il tempo di sottoscrivere un patto educativo globale. Ci impegniamo personalmente e insieme a mettere al centro di ogni processo educativo formale e informale la persona, respingendo quegli stili di vita che favoriscono la diffusione della cultura dello scarto. Secondo, ad ascoltare la voce dei bambini, dei ragazzi e dei giovani, a cui trasmettiamo valori e conoscenze per costruire insieme un futuro di giustizia e di pace. Terzo, a favorire la piena partecipazione delle bambine e delle ragazze all'istruzione. Quarto, a vedere nella famiglia il primo e indispensabile soggetto educatore. Quinto, a educare ed educarci all'accoglienza, aprenderci ai più vulnerabili ed emarginati. Sesto, a impegnarci a studiare per trovare altri modi di intendere l'economia, di intendere la politica, perché siano davvero al servizio dell'uomo e dell'intera famiglia umana nella prospettiva di una ecologia integrale. Settimo, a custodire e coltivare la nostra casa comune. Così dobbiamo andare avanti noi, tutti insieme, ognuno come è, ma sempre guardando avanti insieme verso questa costruzione di una civiltà dell'armonia, dell'unità, dove non ci sia posto per questa cattiva pandemia della cultura dello scarto.
Bueno, creo que podemos
I
oficialmente.
think we can officially begin. I think everybody is in the translation room. If you need to listen to the translation, either Spanish or English, we're going to record this meeting. It's already streaming. If you want to show your face, please switch off your camera, your video. And while we'll also switch off the chat for some time so we are not distracted by the messages. And then we'll open it up again during the debate and the exchange. I'm Patrizia Morgante, in charge of communication at UISG. I'm very happy to facilitate this meeting because we have very important speakers, not just because of who they are, but because of their position in the congregation and their commitment to education. The title of today's meeting is the Global Educational Pact, an opportunity to educate in fraternity and sustainability. And this occasion, this meeting is on occasion of the publishing of this book that will be explained by Juan Antonio. It's very articulate. I'm not going to say much because Juan Antonio will explain everything, but there are several sections that speak of the richness of the engagement of religious life in education, both formal and informal. I think that many of us who are here still feel the echoes of the seminar that we experienced for 3 days that were very intense. I want to give some numbers so you can realize what we experienced. 650 people from 68 different countries and a team organizing among the Commission, USG, and the Appreciative Inquiry team coordinated by Miriam Subira Mpegbota, 40 people in the team, 4 languages, 8 Zoom rooms. I think it was a great miracle, especially to see the people who were so happy of having participated directly into this process of reconstruction of the Global Educational Pact. Pope Francis sent us a letter where, among many things, he says, consecrated life has always been at the forefront of the educational task. As you know, there are 7 essential commitments in this Global Educational Pact that is being promoted. We just heard that on the video. 7 commitments that I'd like to summarize in 3 concrete action lines: to focus, welcome, and involve. It is around these 3 verbs that we will listen to 4 general superiors, 2 women and 2 men, about the experience of the congregation in the educational field. We firstly give the floor to Juan Antonio. He's going to explain how this book is articulated. And before that yet, we're going to give the floor to the Secretary of the Union of General Superiors, Emily Turo, who coordinates and organizes this meeting with us. Thank you so much, and good afternoon or good morning. It is a joy for us, for both unions, to welcome you today for the presentation of this book. We truly are experiencing unusual times. We are experiencing things we would have never imagined, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the politicians from a social level, etc. These are unusual times, and I think they require unusual responses that have to be creative, just as it happened with our founders. They lived during unusual and special and hard times, times of crises, and they had the audacity to be creative and to dive into adventures that seemed impossible. So today, here we are the heirs of that tradition. Therefore, it is beautiful to speak of these topics of education, because we deeply believe that it is a pillar for the social transformation we all desire. And Brother Juan Antonio, as he presents his book, underlines the importance of alliances. And I'd like to also underline this at the beginning of this meeting, the fact that there are two unions of general superiors driving this project, this educational pact, says again that this is a time for alliances, a time for alliances with whomever of goodwill, people who are fighting for a better world, to make alliances with them. And the book is a good expression of this. It is a wonderful exercise of listening to the whole world, beginning with the children. This is the second thing I wanted to underline, that precisely the book begins by listening to the voices of the young, the children, the teenagers. I was recalling the Polish pedagogue Yanis Korsas. As you know, he had under his responsibility a group of children. There were some Jewish kids among them. They took him to a concentration camp, and he could have avoided it, but he said, "Where my kids go, I'm going," and he died with them in the concentration camp. And he said, he used to say, it's difficult to educate children because it is very difficult to place ourselves at their level. But I'm not saying that we have to lower ourselves and make an effort to lower ourselves. No, what is difficult is to place ourselves at the moral height level of the kids and young people. We have to get on our tiptoes. We have to elevate ourselves to see if we manage to be at their level. So it's wonderful that we began by listening to the children and young people, because we still face this challenge to be at their level. Thanks again for this beautiful book. If it's difficult to write a book by oneself, I can imagine what it meant to wait for so many responses as you have them there. What a degree of patience. So welcome to everyone. Thank you, and we're here to listen to you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Emily.
Thank you, Emily, especially for underlining the fact of of turning this educational process to the students and the young. This is the invitation of the Pope. I think you have gone through the synod for young people, for the young people to until now for the educational pact, and in this during this week also the economy of France is that we're going to be dealing with a different economy. I think that the Pope is drawing a methodology. I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have, as I said, the first address will be given by Juan Antonio Ojeda Ortiz, responsible for the OIEC project and consultant for the Congregation for Catholic Education in the Vatican. He accompanied this process, the process of this book, 300 and so pages with many testimonies, giving the floor to many people at different levels. Thank you, Juan Antonio, for accepting our invitation. Then we'll have the testimony of four superiors, Father Pedro Aguado Puestos, General Superior of the Piarists and Coordinator of the Education Commission of USG and UISG. Then we'll have Maria Sacramento Calderon Rodriguez de Guzman, General Superior of the Institute Calasancio Daughters of the Divine Shepherd. Then we continue with Brother Ernesto Sanchez, the Superior General of the Marist Brothers, and to close, Sister Yvonne Rangua, General Superior of the Daughters of Mary Auxiliatrice, known as the Salesians. We're going to ask questions of our speakers. We're going to begin understanding the richness of this book. Juan Antonio, you have 10 minutes to get into this. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm going to share my screen to focus my ideas better. The title of this book is Lights for the Way, Global Educational Pact. We do not start from scratch. Of course, there's already a process at the national or international level in the social or ecclesiastic sector that have been telling us for years how important it is to rely on a pact. The situation we are currently experiencing as far as this catastrophe in education and the idea of the Pope to organize a global pact acquires more urgency. This book was written during the months of March to June in the middle of the pandemic. It is a work done at the OIEC to motivate, raise the awareness, and involve many in this reflection and search for this pact to allow for a better education. First of all, this pact is presented as a great opportunity to renew, reaffirm, reimagine, or reconstruct, rebuild education, the school, the service we offer in each classroom or to each person. So when we speak about the pact, it's not just about agreeing agreements among the major authorities or countries. What matters is also the work we do in our cities, towns, neighborhoods, schools, in every classroom. And from there, the opportunity to allow the different sectors to participate to this book. Recently, during the October 15 meeting, the General Director of UNESCO said that we need a new engagement by the entire society in favor of education. So we do not need more sharpshooters or specialists. It is something we need to rebuild among all of us. The book is presented as an incomplete document. It didn't want to cover everything. You see that even covering a few things, the pages are very many, and it's built among many people. There are a total of 220 people from 45 countries, and there are 65 projects being presented. It's something that needs to be completed because the idea is to provide light, to inspire, to enable the others to see which lights are more adequate for their context or reality, or what other lights could brighten their path of alliance to do something in common with their neighbors and with people afar. But it's a book that wants to inspire, a book for a reflection, either alone or with others, to search together. It provides more lights and drives us, it aims at driving us into action. I'm saying that this is a book to act, and based on that, to correct the direction. We know a lot more of what we're capable to implement. So it's about experiencing, does this work? Can we do it like this? Etc. And move forward. We do not continue reflecting, I believe. The structure of this book is simple. There are some prologues. One of them is from Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez de Madera, another one from Philippe Richard, the Secretary General of OIEC. Then there's a part of invitations. I wrote the introduction. Monsignor Zani presents the pact, and we record the invitation of Pope Francis in September 2019. And we introduced to the Instrumentum Laboris with two work methodologies. There could be others as well, but this can help us address the reflection. Then the big chunk of the book where young people, children throughout the world, people, general superiors, and world experts provide those lights that we will look at briefly. I dared to prepare a summary, but I don't want to kill the richness of each contribution. When you summarize, the rest goes to the second level. No, I just want to appeal you to open your appetite so you can gradually read everything. And the last block speaks of the global idea. Please, Juan Antonio, slow down. Thank you. In the preface, the cardinal says it is a place for meeting, a space for a dialogue and a common search, where we have to take up different contributions from a plural society. Instead of looking at this as an issue, we have to look at this as an advantage, a richness to be able to listen to others. We are told that the pact is not an imposition, it opens ways that are detailed and universalized. We have to reinvent education, and it quotes the Laudato Si to spread a new model of person, society, and relations. And it is urgent to land and to act. We need educators with a soul. And it says that the school is both a place for learning and also a place for relations, where we build fraternities, where we learn to respect each other, to see the life of others. Therefore, we have to give more protagonism to children and young people. In this prologue of the General Secretary, we read that the pact is a tool that's going to allow us to work together and by association. We are very fractured, fragmented, and we have to unite and be associated. This is a constant idea throughout the book. Therefore, we need to involve children, the faculty, the families, and people from the social context. We have to work with other schools that can help us develop that synergies also with other Catholic schools, but also with non-Catholic schools, other agents, athletes, business people, etc. I wanted to underline one of the testimonies, specifically the one of Father Cristobal Lopez. He's a cardinal of Rabat, he's Salesian. He says that at the time we enter into an agreement where one thing is a pact suggested by the Vatican, major authorities, ministers, etc. But he says at page 185, he says that each Catholic school should invite at the local level, that is the city hall, educational centers in town, the associations, the unions, etc. Each locality should reproduce this pact at the local level in order to generate a dynamic that guarantees an education for all and that transforms it in a renewing force in that same locality. Therefore, a school that educates, but also a city that educates. I think that this is very interesting. It's enriching, and it opens the doors to the classrooms, to the school, to find each other and together embrace a project that is beyond us and that is in common. I insist in this introduction that it is very important to listen from humility, because humility is what allows us to listen, to learn, to know our limits, our difficulties. It presupposes empathy, compassion, and walking step by step. Monsignor Zani in the second chapter also says that it is a collective response. He invites us to have a dialogue about this more fraternal humanity we must establish among all, responding to unprecedented challenges in an alliance to take on for everyone, putting the person at the center, people who have to be willing to serve the community. And he insists that we have to face this new context with responsibility and working together. We are in an area of collaboration. If competing and doing things in an isolated fashion was good for the past, today we are required to work in collaboration. It's the only way. The instrumental labores, you all know it. I'm not going to spend too much time. There's four blocks: project, context, vision, mission. What we do in this book is we offer two ways: one more traditional with questions, suggestions, dialogue for small groups, and another method to design the change that allows us to start from the heart and feel what and see what we feel, what concerns us, and then achieve this reflection and share it. It's another methodology. You worked with the appreciative inquiry during this seminar. All of this helps us understand the reality that is being presented in this document better. Now we go to the contributions. They all answered four questions. They spoke of difficulties or resistance to the PAC. What can be done to improve education? How can we promote an integral education? And perhaps some other lights or pathway for this. This allows us to have a transversal gaze and to see what one continent says as opposed to others, one person as opposed to other, and draw comparisons to refine our reflection and our search. In the chapter about the children, we have to indicate that they they do not show improvements in traditional topics. They want to learn what is not taught at the school. They want to learn to be better people, to be more empathetic, to have more compassion in a school that's become nasty. It's become violent. There are a lot of abuse, bullying, etc. They even recommend, they say that they expect to be more fraternal in solidarity, to learn to coexist. And how is that done? Well, by coexisting and relating through a humble listening of others, being tolerant. And also they show a very special sensitivity with regard to the care of our common home. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that they want to mobilize and act now. They're not going to take care of the common home when they're 25 or 30 years old. As of 5, 6, 8 years old, they want to already do something to improve the environment and the relationship with others and be better people. They want to combine theory, experiment, and action. There were 68 children participating. I think this situates us in a new environment. In the traditional school, the professor is at the top and in the front. In this school, the professor is in the middle. We have to focus on the child, and as educators, we have to take a step back. This is what was also stated by the Pope during the World Meeting with Children with regard to the project I Can and designing change. The Pope told us we have to listen. We have to take a step back to listen to the children. In the fifth chapter, when we speak of the people in the world, we're talking about more than 10 ministers, cardinals, bishops, presidents of bishops' conferences, directors of centers, presidents of international Catholic schools. We're talking about parents with regard to the difficulties of this pact. They say that agreeing is not an option, it is urgent. We have to have a dialogue. No one has to feel superior. We have to avoid fear. We insist on saying that we need to educate the being, not the doing, the heart and the engagement, and not just the head and our mind. We have to collaborate and participate with all. We have to educate for values, reinforce the community dimension of the school. The school has to be open to life. The classroom has to be more human, welcoming. We've sometimes made it too spiritual or too indifferent. We have to humanize the classroom, collaboration among all, and communicate and exchange best practices. Nowadays, we understand sharing not as losing, as if we were being robbed of something that is ours, rather as a richness, something that gives value to what we already do. And we need competent and passionate teachers. The general superiors insist again on these aspects, focusing on the person. a, a full-time school that can combine formal and non-formal education, a school that is open, that listens, that welcomes in this culture of encounter, offering a comprehensive education, head, heart, hands. Not to say we do it because we're still focused on our head when everything indicates that we should start from the heart, and any education has to lead to a commitment and to transformation. We have to redefine the model of person and society we want to situate ourselves better in the classroom and adjust the program, the course of studies. With we continue giving a lot of importance to mathematics, language, etc. We're not applying any importance to arts, humanities, what really humanizes us. So this presupposes changing the course of studies and the topics with a fraternal education in solidarity. What is more impressing, you all said that, to work together, work intercongregate and intercongregations, increase the mutual knowledge and interaction between an institution and the other, collaborate, share, and achieve projects together. This is a huge amount of work. We come from a scenario of competition, independence, but it's the reality is increasingly complex, and we have to address it with others. In chapter 7, we listen to world experts. Again, they insist on placing the person at the center, not because we say we do, because the children are usually below, one after the other, in silence. We have to recover this humanist focus on education. UNESCO and the church say this. It is important to put it in practice, a comprehensive quality education for all, cooperation instead of individualism, rethink the methods, the subjects, the roles, the space, even the space, that the space is educating, it can facilitate the learning or raise obstacles. It has to be a space that favors the encounter relation and non-discrimination. To give you an example, many children felt the need and to have in to see that in the courtyard some kids are isolated because they're shy. They've created areas to welcome, to coexist and relate. It's an inspiration. Integrate formal and non-formal education, a school that goes out to life and that can bring life into the school, not a school that turns its back on life. Strengthening networks, working together, developing competence among the faculty. And they also point out something that is very important, the passion for the last ones. The school, as Lorenzo Milani was saying, is not a hospital for healthy people. School and Catholic school should welcome the children, especially those with greater difficulties, and putting them at the center of our projects. Care for the formation of formators, generate more fraternity, care, etc. Build a global citizenship, form hearts that are filled with compassion, and that eco-social commitment to taking into account the social, the ecologic dimension and the social. The OIEC can be an articulated core to create a large network of networks. And ultimately, we have chapter 8 that seems like a very enriching chapter. It shows 65 projects at the local level or national level or even international, grouped based on those four areas that the Pope pointed out. What do we do with regard to the right to education, or with regard to peace, solidarity, and ecology? There are multiple projects that emphasize that the pact is possible, and they inspire us not to continue doing this alone and in isolation. Rather, hey, we're going to work on ecology. Why don't we share projects? Not try to just promote our own project, rather in common. Doing things in common does not prevent us from doing something at the personal level. And I stop right here. Otherwise, I will take up all afternoon. This is just a global overview. So thank you very much. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Gracias, Juan Antonio. Sí,
Thank you, Juan. Tonio, yes, you spoke a little longer, but I think it was important to let you complete this overview to better understand. I will now send the possibility to directly download this text. And as the text said, there are no translations. There are several languages inside this text, so we've respected the original contribution. So thank you for giving us this focus. Now, as you said, since it's the time to implement this, we're going to listen to four testimonies of people who concretely live the educational reality on a daily basis. So we're going to put our hands into reality. The question I ask of the four initially is, what does it mean for the educational mission of congregations, of religious congregations? What does this pact mean for you? What would you emphasize of this pact in as you consider the reality of your congregation? I'm going to give the floor to Pedro, then to Sister Sacramento, then Ernesto, and then Yvonne. Pedro. Good morning and good afternoon. It's a very concrete question. We cannot forget that when Pope Francis speaks of this pact, he places a verb before it. He says rebuild. He thinks that the educational pact was either broken or is fragile. We have to strengthen it. Of all the words that I could choose to answer this question, I chose one, which is challenge. And I want to dedicate these 5 minutes to explaining why this proposal by Pope Francis is a deep challenge for our congregations that engage in education, because the Global Educational Pact is not just a series of events we hold. It is a formidable process to rethink education and to situate it where it needs to be. The key is a better and different world. When I wonder about the challenges, I ask myself two questions. The first one is, we the religious, the congregations, where do we get our challenges from? And the second question is, where do we respond from? And I'd like to explain this very quickly. I think that we deep down receive challenges from four sources: from our identity, what we are, what we were founded for. It's something historic. Second, from the reality in which we are and that we try to respond to. Thirdly, the children and young people and their questions and their concerns and needs. And fourth, the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Christian community that bears that gospel. These are the strongest contexts in which we feel challenged. So we must situate this challenge of the Pope precisely there in those four areas. How are we challenged in our identity and our social response? How does he challenge us in what we do in favor of children and young people? And how does he challenge us in our way of understanding? And how do we respond? Well, I chose three contexts, three areas of response. There are many, but I'm just suggesting these. Firstly, I think that the challenge directly addresses our educational projects, our institutional projects. All the congregations have a clear educational project that is participative, that is known. We spend many days transmitting and improving it. If we do not renew our educational institutional project in light of the challenges of the pact, we are not building the pact. I'll give you two examples. We should place within our educational project at the center the work we need to do in order to reform and transform society and to strengthen our students so they are capable of creating a different world. We have to prepare them for a world that does not exist. That must be part of the educational project or the effort to network. We should, in our project, we should say that our congregations believe in collaborative work, in common work. We should place that in the most important documents of our congregation. That is a response to the challenge, and this little by little will transform our way of working. A second reply we give is our network. And I'm saying this very simply. A religious congregation is a network in itself. And sometimes we forget how can we work at the congregational level as family more together. The Catholic school is a network. How can we strengthen it? The creation of networks and networking with all the communities, institutions, and groups, as Emily said, people of goodwill, Catholic or non, but those who want a more just world, we have to involve them as well. I think the strong challenge here is around this idea. We have to change our mentality. The third reply I would give to these challenges is that we are challenged in our soul, in our congregations, in our schools. They have a soul. The soul is the place for the dynamism, for the charism, the convictions, the people who bet on that project. It's the place for faith, priorities. That's where we need to place the educational pact and the challenges so that the teams are truly looking at this universal proposal that is for all of us. So I would suggest that we should feel challenged. We have to analyze where we get these challenges from and from where we respond. The religious congregations feel very challenged. So my 5 minutes are up. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Pedro, y por haber subrayado la
Thank
fragilidad
you for emphasizing the fragility of education, the importance of identity as well,
de la historia de
the
la congregación
charism,
y
the
cómo
history of the congregation.
y esto
And the congregation, a congregation is a network, and this
moderno.
places us directly at the middle of the modern society. Now we're going to listen to Sister Sacramento.
El micro, hermana, por
Your
favor.
microphone, sister.
Gracias.
Buenos días, buenas tardes.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are.
En primer lugar, agradecer
Well, firstly, I want to
de
thank
participar
you for the possibility to participate to this roundtable.
cuando me sitúo
When
al lado
I
del Papa a reconstruir
situate myself in the light of this call from the Pope to rebuild the global educational pact, I feel that in addition to being a challenge, it's a very good piece of news. We are in a world that needs good news, and I think that this call from the Pope is very good news. I personally believe that it is a gift of the Lord for this moment that we are living
esa convocatoria en toda
in
esta
this call from the Pope.
impacta y que me
There
gusta
is something that strikes me that is that it is
convicción que
clear
debemos
how deeply the Pope is convinced of the transforming power of education. It is a conviction
el corazón
that was always in the heart of each of our founders.
y yo creo que hace
And that is why I think it makes us be a collective group that really sympathize with this call from the Pope.
como subrayaba
I believe, as Pedro said,
su
that
desafío
the educational pact is a challenge,
que pone a
and it is a
nuestra
challenge that puts our educational mission
reflexión
in a state of reflection, discernment, reconstruction, strengthening, and as in order to strengthen everything that we felt and that we've done in our path. It is a challenge that puts us in a position of hope because the Pope insists that the education is called to enlighten. It is humanism and solidarity that he bets on.
yendo un poquito más
As we land a little farther onto the challenges, I would say that a first one is the possibility that
este pacto
the response to this pact gives to us to renew the vocation of the educator,
de todos aquellos que
the vocation of all those
pasión de vida.
who turn education into our passion.
Cuando el Papa
I like it when the Pope
como
speaks
artesano
of educators as artisans of the future generations.
el artesano es el que trabaja
By
con el
this
fuego, con esa
call. I mean, the artisan works from his heart, so it's a call to put our heart into it. I think this is important because if we are passionate educators, it'll be much easier to give this response that the Pope is asking for. I also think he's sending another challenge to this mission, that is to bet on that humanism and solidarity that places the person at the center. As here we have traveled for a long way, but undoubtedly we need to strengthen this path in the midst of this reality that we are living. We have to place the person at the center in order to accompany this person in the self knowledge, especially in discovering fraternity as a source of enrichment. I believe that this option, this typical option of our identity of believers, presupposes to humanize our outlook. It presupposes humanizing our educational options. Another challenge is about is the fact that our educational mission has to be constituted, and here I want to underline a word of Juan Antonio, constituted based on unity, simplicity as an antidote for the individualistic culture we are living in. Our schools, our centers must truly be an affirmative word for the culture of inclusion a a no to the culture, the throwaway culture. I insist on something that Pedro said, the importance of our educational projects. They really have to have a clear and defined objective, a promotion of that culture of dialogue, of encounter, openness, and welcoming the difference. Another challenge that I think is launched by this pact is to educate in for two skills that are essential, that is teach our students to learn to be part of society and to learn to inhabit the world. We have to educate them for global citizenship so that they know how to inhabit the world, and that they can do this based on responsibility and a commitment to the local level and the surroundings to learn to be part of society. Another challenge, to not extend myself, is about choosing an education. Here too, we think we've done some work, an education that is at the service of the community, of the surroundings, those most in need. Our educational centers have to have an identity of learning and service with a conviction that personal transformation will be achieved especially through commitment and service that will enable, permit transforming the surrounding. And lastly, we are facing the challenge of putting our centers in a situation of alliance, in a network from within and toward the outside, with a constant openness to what surrounds us in an inclusive dialogue, in a common search for consensus, this consensus that always chooses the common good as opposed to partial interests. I believe we have to be aware of the fact that believing that education is the action of a person or an institution is over. We all need each other. We're all on the same boat, and we need to generate these alliances, as the presentation of the book stated, at high levels, but also at the local level within our own centers. And lastly, another challenge is turning our centers and educational institutions into cultural references for the environment, centers that are open to the environment and the surroundings. Sorry, I don't know if I went over my time. Thank you so much for everything you underlined. this idea about education as passion, educators as artisans, and also this invitation to look at the pact as an invitation to be in a continuous state of discernment and strengthening. Thank you very
La
much.
palabra va a Ernesto.
Now we give the floor to Ernesto. Welcome.
Muchas gracias y saludos, Patricia.
Thank you and greetings, Patricia and Sister Sacramento, Yvonne, Brother Emily, Father Pedro, and thank you, Juan Antonio, for the invitation to participate to this panel. But thank you especially to you and the team for this production, the production of this book, Lights for the Way. When I was invited to collaborate to this book, I really became more interested in this idea of the Global Educational Pact. I think it is very, this intuition is very prophetic, this initiative of Pope Francis about rebuilding the Global Educational Pact, because we have to promote a change, but a change that requires an educational pathway, as the Pope says.
En el video motivacional
In
que
the
lanzó,
motivational video he
el
launched,
Papa decía
the
siempre
Pope said
africano que dice,
this proverb, this African proverb, in order to educate a child, we need a whole
qué
village.
imagen tan sencilla,
What a simple image, but filled with
y
content.
decía,
And he
debemos
said,
construirlo
but we must
juntos,
build this
todos
village
juntos.
all together in order to educate the children and educate for the future.
Creo que la misión
I
educativa
think that the
es uno de
educational
los campos más
mission is one
privilegiados
of the
de
most
educación.
privileged fields where you can build that village that wants to educate. We rely on the young, on the
Sus
children,
familias,
their
tantas
families, and
posibilidades
so many
desde pequeños,
possibilities to
y a la vez
offer.
también reconocemos la
And at the
ausencia
same
de
time,
ejemplos
we simply
de ese tipo.
recognize that that is our contribution,
Niño pues
because the education of a
en el
child,
ambiente familiar,
well, also
sociales.
happens in the family, in the social environment, etc.
La propuesta del Papa
The proposal
es
of the Pope aims at
importante
an
y
important
radical.
change and a radical
Está en
change
juego un modelo de vida
where there's a model, the model of a person that is at stake, a model of society, and even a model for the church,
hemos experimentado con frecuencia
models
esta
whose
pandemia.
fragility we have experienced during this pandemic.
La
And
encíclica
I think that this
Humani
recent encyclical of the Pope speaks of that model. What would I emphasize? Well, first of all, that we seek to form people
para el
who
servicio y para el
comprehensively
servicio.
for the service and to be happy, thereby generating a renewed humanism that cares for life with its beauty, fragility,
Acogiendo la diversidad.
welcoming diversity.
Dice el
The
verdadero
Instrumentum Laboris
servicio de
says
la
that the
educación
true service of education
es el servicio.
is educating for
Un
service,
servicio que se hace
a
concreto
service that becomes concrete when it especially
a los vulnerables.
attends to those who
En
are
esta
most
búsqueda de formar personas
vulnerable. In this
con una
search
relación
to
educativa
form people
profunda,
comprehensively, the educational relationship is the
demostrando
focus, because the experience confirms that a fruitful education strongly
calidad
depends
de
on the
relación
quality
que se
of
establece
the relationship that is established between the professor and the students,
a
a
ponernos al lado
relationship that leads us to put ourselves alongside the children,
situándonos
walking
más como
with them,
discípulos,
situating ourselves more as disciples
donde la
than
escucha, la
teachers,
empatía, la
where
comprensión
listening, empathy, and understanding become
cotidianas.
a pedagogy of everyday life and not an
Para
exception.
educar es preciso amar,
In order to educate, you have to
ser
love,
buenos
forming
ciudadanos.
good Christians and good citizenships. These are
Marcelino
two of
Champagnat.
the most important tasks provided by Saint Marcelin Champagnat, our founder, with regard to the care for the common home based on the
Se
guidelines in
trata
Laudato
de
Si.
incluir
It's about including the environmental issue
intrínsecamente
from a vision that is intrinsically relational,
y no
that
formado
we
por
are a
fuerza.
part of. And it is not something that is outside or far from us.
En todo esto, pues de ahí
In all of this,
repensar nuestra
there's
educación
the importance of rethinking our educational projects in under
de las
a
personas
perspective of encounter and care for the people, cultures, communities, and
y también
creation.
junto con el revisar y
I would say that along with reviewing and rethinking the educational projects, it'll be important to favor the networks in order to share, offer formation at all levels, and we have to make each educator feel, as well as parent, that he is an educator not just in a school or family or locality. He is an educator for humanity. We educate to generate different humanity, a renewed world with the awareness of being a world community that is navigating in one same boat. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ernesto,
Thank you, Ernesto.
por esta
I very much
subrayar esta dimensión intrínseca
appreciated this dimension that is intrinsically relational, that we live within ourselves,
realidad más
within
cercana,
our
también dentro de
reality that is closer, but also within this world that is more global.
ahora vamos a escuchar
And as we listen to all of you, we're going to listen to Sister Yvonne. I'm under the impression that education is a comprehensive education for comprehensive development, not just individual. It is at the community, social level, and also cosmic. It's a very interesting challenge that we also looked at during the seminar. Thank you, Ernesto. Now the floor to Sister Yvonne.
micrófono.
Muchas gracias, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
Gracias. ¿Me entienden?
Sí, muy bien.
Do you
Sí.
hear
Ah,
me?
muy bien.
Yes.
Gracias por invitarme
Thank you
a
for
este momento.
inviting me
Pido
to this
disculpas porque mi español
moment.
no es perfecto,
Apologies because
pero
my
es
Spanish is
mejor que el
not
inglés.
perfect, but it's better than my English.
He leído español. Muchas gracias por la comprensión.
So thank you
Pienso
for your
que
understanding. I
hablar
think
del Pacto
that
Educativo Global
speaking of the Global Educational
es
Pact
un
is
tema que
a
es muy interesante y que da
topic that's
alegría
very
y mucha
interesting and it gives
esperanza. Yo
joy and
escuché
hope.
Papa
I
Francisco cuando
heard
en
Pope
el Congreso
Francis when
Internacional de la
during
Educación
the International
Católica,
Education
creo en
Congress
2016,
in 2016, I
dijo
believe, when he
la
said
alianza educativa
that the Educational Alliance
está rota, no existe
is
y
broken, it
hay que
doesn't exist, we
rehacerla.
have to redo
A mí me
it.
sonó mucho esta expresión de Papa
This
Francisco.
expression
Y lo
echoed,
que me
resonated
impacta es
in
que
me.
Papa
What strikes
Francisco
me is
lo
that
que
Pope
dice después
Francis
lo pasa a la vida. Y ha
puts
buscado
into practice whatever
la
he says,
posibilidad de
and
hacer
he looked for a
reflexionar
possibility
toda
to
la
make
Iglesia
the
y el
entire
mundo
church
sobre la
and the world
educación y sobre
reflect on
este pacto
education,
global de la
about this
educación.
global educational
En
pact,
un mundo en donde muchas veces
in a world
en
where
la sociedad
oftentimes in
no se
society
da la importancia a la
there's no
educación.
importance given to
Si vemos
education.
las opciones
We,
políticas,
if we look
muchas
at the
veces
political
la
options,
educación
oftentimes
no tiene el
education
lugar que tendría
doesn't
que haber.
occupy the
Y
place
es
it
una
should.
prioridad
It
absoluta
is an
porque de la
absolute priority
educación
because
depende el futuro de
the
cada
future of
sociedad y
each
de la humanidad.
society and
Yo
of
soy
humanity
cada
depend
vez
on
más
education.
convencida
I'm increasingly
que la
convinced
educación es
that
la base
education is the
de todo el
basis
futuro
for
y no
the
habrá ningún
entire
cambiamiento
future. There will be
si no
no
hay un
changes
cambiamiento en la educación,
unless
si no
there's a
hay
change in
una
education,
educación
unless
que
there's an education
pueda
that
llegar
can
al corazón de los
reach
niños y
the heart
jóvenes
of the
para
children and young
que ellos
people
mismos se hagan
so
protagonistas,
they
sean
can
capaces
become the main
de
characters, so they are
transformar la
capable
sociedad
of
y el
transforming
mundo.
society and the world.
Pienso que esta reflexión ayuda
I
a
think that
todas
this
a tomar
reflection
conciencia
helps everybody
de
become
una
aware
responsabilidad
of
común
a
de
common
los adultos,
responsibility
de los jóvenes
in
mismos,
adults and even
de
young
toda
people,
la sociedad.
the entire society.
Pienso que el formar,
I think
el
that
pensar construir una sociedad
thinking about
más solidaria,
building a
más
society
fraterna,
with more solidarity and
pide
fraternity
educar a los jóvenes
requires
a formar
educating the
a las
young
personas en este sentido.
or forming people
Formar a
in
la
this
fraternidad,
direction,
al cuidado, al
forming for
respeto.
fraternity, for care, for respect.
Y seguramente
And
que
certainly,
la educación, al menos para mí, no hay
education, at
educación
least
sin
for
crear un
me, there's
ambiente.
no education unless you
Un
create an
ambiente en
environment,
donde todas las
environment
fuerzas
where all the
educativas
forces, all the educational
convergen
forces
en un proyecto común,
converge
en una
into
visión
a
común.
common project, a common vision,
Un ambiente
an
donde
environment
hay
where
confianza,
there's
confianza
trust,
recíproca.
mutual trust,
Un ambiente
an
donde hay una
environment
calidad de
where
relación, ha
there's
sido
a
subrayado
quality of relations
varias
that
veces
was
esta tarde.
emphasized
No hay
several times.
educación sin
There's no
calidad de relación.
education with no quality in the
Porque se
relation.
puede haber toda la
Because you can
competencia
have all the skills
técnica, pedagógica, lo que queremos,
technical,
pero si no se
pedagogical competence,
establece
but if
una
unless you
relación entre
establish
educadores y
a
jóvenes,
relation among
no pasa el
educators and
mensaje.
young people, the
Y
message
eso
is
es
not
importante en un
transmitted.
ambiente que
And this
será
is important
seguramente
in an
una comunidad
environment that will
educativa,
certainly be an
pero
educational
también una
community,
comunidad
but also
educativa
an
abierta,
educational community that
abierta
is
al territorio,
open to the
abierta a
territory,
otras instituciones
open to
educativas,
other educational
abierta al mundo del
institutions, open to
trabajo,
the world
abierta a la
of work,
iglesia
open
local,
to the local church,
para favorecer
in order to
la preparación de los
promote
jóvenes a
the
integrar esta
preparation, the
sociedad.
training of the
No
young
formamos
people
los
to be
jóvenes para
integrated
nosotros,
into the
sino
society. We don't
para que
form young people
puedan
for ourselves, rather
hacerse
so they
protagonistas
can become
capaces de
protagonists
transformar
who
a la
are capable
sociedad.
of
Y
transforming
pienso que en
society.
este
And I
sentido,
think that in this sense,
la colaboración, la alianza
collaboration and
entre
the
la
alliance
familia, los
between
educadores, las familias, los
among families,
educadores,
educators,
los jóvenes mismos,
the young people,
para ir haciendo un camino
to
juntos. Yo pienso que
establish, to
juntos
create a
es
pathway
una
together. I
palabra
think that
mágica,
together is a magic word,
porque
because
juntos familias y educadores,
together families and educators,
juntos entre
together
los jóvenes,
among young
juntos entre
people,
las diferentes
together
congregaciones e
among the
institutos,
different congregations and
juntos con
institutes,
creyentes de
together
diferentes
with
religiones, y
believers of
juntos
different
también
religions, and
con no
together
creyentes,
also with non-believers,
abiertas al futuro y
open to
deseosas de
the
generar
future and with a
una
desire
plenitud de
to
vida en el mundo
generate
juvenil.
a plenitude of life in
Juntos para que
in
las
the
jóvenes
world
y
of the
los
youths,
jóvenes
together
y
so
las
that young
mujeres
people
jóvenes realicen la experiencia
can
de la
have
solidaridad
the
y de la
experience of
sinergia entre
solidarity
las
and synergy
distintas vocaciones y
among the
roles
different
para
vocations and
aprender a
roles,
expresarlo a
to
su vez.
learn to express it.
Creo que el gran
I think
privilegio
that
de
the
la
great
escuela o del
privilege
ambiente
of the
educativo
school or
es la
educational environment
posibilidad de
is the
hacer una
possibility
experiencia
to have an
de educación
experience
recíproca.
of mutual
Me
education.
gusta mucho pensar en la
I like to
reciprocidad en la
think of
educación,
reciprocity in education,
porque nos
because
aportamos unos a otros,
we
adultos y jóvenes,
contribute to each
adultos
other,
entre adultos, jóvenes entre
adult
jóvenes,
and young people,
a
adults with
hacer
adults,
la
and young people with
experiencia
young people,
de
to
la
live, to
fraternidad,
have
de
an
la
experience of
solidaridad, y
fraternity,
eso hace
solidarity,
creer que es
and this
posible,
makes us
porque
believe
las
that it is
palabras no son
possible because
suficientes.
words are not enough.
Entonces, creo que
So I believe
este pacto global,
that this global
pacto educativo
educational
global,
pact
nos ayuda a
can
pensar,
help us
reflexionar
think,
y buscar caminos
reflect,
para
and also
realizarlo.
look
No
for
se puede
pathways to
hacer
achieve it.
sin
It cannot be done
ponernos a la escucha los
without
unos de los otros,
placing ourselves,
porque
without
no se
listening
puede
to the others,
responder
because we
a
cannot
las necesidades
respond
educativas
to
si
the
no se
educational
conoce el
needs
mundo
until
juvenil.
we know the
Y el
world of
mundo juvenil
young people.
mismo
and the
se hace
world of
conocer,
young people is
se
makes
revela
itself known. It is
cuando
revealed
hay una relación
when
de
there is
amor,
a
cuando
relationship
hay
of love,
empatía,
when there's
cuando hay
empathy,
confianza
when
recíproca,
there's
cuando
mutual
hay
trust,
búsqueda
when there's a
en
search
conjunto, búsqueda
together,
juntos.
a common
Y
search.
entonces viene la
So
creatividad. Creo
that's when
que
creativity
hablar de
emerges. I
pacto
think
educativo
that
global en
speaking
este
of global
momento de la
educational pact
pandemia,
at
cuando
this
Papa
time during the
Francisco
pandemic, when Pope
lanzó
Francis launched
la idea, no
this
había la
idea,
pandemia, al menos
there
no
was no
sabíamos.
pandemic. At least we did
Pero
not
en
know
este
it. But
momento
at this
es
time,
más fuerte el desafío,
the challenge is stronger
porque es más difícil.
because it is more
El,
difficult.
hay que inventar
We have
los
to
caminos
invent
para
the pathways
realizar
in order to
el ambiente
achieve
educativo,
the educational
cuando muchas
environment,
veces hay que
when
hacerlo
oftentimes
virtualmente,
it needs to be done virtually,
cuando muchas
when
veces hoy
oftentimes
no es posible
it is
en
not
muchas partes del mundo,
possible today in many areas of the world,
cuando al mismo tiempo
when at the same time
la formación virtual ha
virtual
ayudado
formation
a entrar
has
más en
helped
contacto con las familias,
to
porque
be
ha hecho
more in touch
entrar
with
en las casas.
families, because it has
Pero son
taken
retos
us
nuevos que
inside the homes. But
seguramente
these are new
tendrán
challenges that
sus
will
consecuencias
certainly bring
en la
consequences
personalidad misma
in
de
the
los
actual
jóvenes y de las jóvenes,
personality of
al mismo
young
tiempo que de
people
los educadores.
as well as the educators.
Creo que
I
para
believe
vivirlo
that in
hay
order to
que ser muy
experience this,
apasionadas,
we have to be very
apasionados, algunos de
passionate.
ustedes lo dijeron,
Some of you said this,
porque transmitir
because
pasión para la vida,
conveying passion
pasión
for
para ser,
life,
para
passion
creer
to
que
be and to
podemos
believe
transformar
that we
nuestro
can
mundo,
transform our world
pide una gran pasión,
requires great
pasión
passion,
compartida,
a passion that is shared,
pasión
a passion
que es una pasión de comunidad,
that is a
una
passion of
pasión de
community, a
pueblo,
passion
una pasión
of an entire
colectiva,
people, a
y
collective
así
passion,
ser un signo
and
que
be
es posible
a
y un
sign
signo de
that
esperanza.
it is
Algunos
possible and a
elementos.
sign for hope.
Muchas gracias, hermana Ivonne.
Thank you, Sister Yvonne.
Me han salido
As I listened to you, I thought of many words from Fratelli Tutti. There are some keywords that you shared with us, especially highlighting this collective community dimension.
y también el punto
Also, the initial point when you spoke of the political invisibility of education. I think we are especially experiencing this at this time when children have been set aside.
bueno, muchas gracias.
So thank you so much. How much richness, yes?
Y en estos 3 días que hemos
During these
compartido,
3 days that we shared during the seminar,
Miriam, una de las
Miriam, one of the formators, helped us
visualizar
visualize
los sueños y también
the
a tomar
dreams
contacto con
and
las
also to be in touch with the keywords
pertenecen.
that belong to us in education. So
Que sea demasiado
I
pasivo,
don't want this meeting to be too passive, although these words involve us. I want to invite you to take a moment of silence. If you want to close your eyes, you can do so freely.
simplemente un momento de escuchar
Just a moment of listening to all the words of life we've heard so far.
qué nos provoca dentro.
What is this raising in us, within us?
¿Cuáles son las palabras de más
What are the words that we feel are closest?
Creo que cada una y cada uno de
I
nosotros
think that
tenemos un sueño
each
para
of
educar.
us has a dream about
Invito a
education.
no pensar
I
en el
invite
sueño,
you to not
a
think
intentar de
of this dream, to
ver una
try
imagen.
to give
¿Cuál
an
es la
image.
imagen de mi
What
sueño
is
educativo?
the image of my educational dream?
¿Qué forma tiene esta imagen?
What shape does this image have?
¿Qué colores tiene esta
What
imagen?
colors does this image have?
¿Le puedo dar un título a esta imagen?
Can I give a title to this image that represents my dream?
Quien lo desea puede compartir.
Those who wish can share a word through the chat box so that this process of reinventing and rethinking the educational pact is as community is as in a community as possible. We're going to look at every word you're going to share. That is a good reaction, a gift for the people who've been sharing with us so far.
Nos vamos reescribiendo.
We're going to rewrite the educational pact. We're going to send all these reactions to the Pope so that he knows what he's creating.
Pueden escribir en todos idiomas.
You can write in every language.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todos y a todas.
So thank you all. Continue writing. We're going to leave the chat open. Now we're going to do another round of questions. I have another question
Ser un poco más práctica también,
to
¿no?
be a little more practical.
¿Cuál es el específico?
What is the specific contribution of your congregation to the Global Educational Pact? I invite you to not only think of formal education schools. I know that many congregations are already experimenting being educators in environments, as Sister Yvonne said, that are different, not a environment that are structured as a school. So let's begin once again with Pedro. 5 minutes more quickly to give some time to listen to the 300 participants on the Zoom meeting and the 100 that are following through YouTube. Well, your question is very demanding because it makes us think about what each congregation contributes. What can we contribute? I think it's very important to realize that all our congregations were founded to build new horizons for the children, for young people, and with God, and with them, we were founded to change the world. This is the definition of our meaning in the church and society. I've chosen two small ideas that I'd like to mention, that I'd like to contribute, and then a very concrete, practical thing we've tried doing as a response to what Francis is asking for. I've called them commitment and quality. Commitment. I'd like my congregation to deeply build this pact with all the congregations and networks that are here. If we do this, think about it, thousands and thousands of schools, thousands of congregations, hundreds of thousands of educators, charisms, all together, the process will be unique. So the main contribution is to commit with our identity to respond to Francis's proposal. The second one, I've called it quality, but it could be called in different ways. What I mean to say is that we have to try to do things well. We're not here to play with this topic. I'd like to quote a sentence of our founder, Joseph de Calazans, who wrote this. If our work is achieved with the necessary astonishment, it's undoubtable that we will continue with the insistent petitions for foundation in many towns, cities, and countries, as has been happening for us, religious who engage in education. Quality is a synonym of self-giving, of delivering everyday work to do things well, contribute our model of school. It's a full-time school, formal, non-formal, informal, to contribute the capability to evangelize. We work with all, but we don't speak of what is totally ours, Christ and his gospel, and contribute to those characteristics that we have, that we want our schools to have. Schools that are open, accessible, schools for the poor, schools that promote comprehensive education, capable of responding to that passionate challenge that sometimes we ignore, that was approved more than 50 years ago. The priority for the Catholic school are the poor, the broken families, and those kids who don't have the gift of faith. This was stated in a council to speak of the purpose of a school. So for me, commitment and quality are two contributions we have to offer. And specifically, concretely, this year we have driven an attempt to respond to Pope Francis. We created a master, a 2-year master in several languages in right to education. It is called ICALDE. And our intention is to form professionals to work in several countries for the right to education, to access quality education for all the children and young people in the world, because the right to education and to quality education is still something that is pending. We cannot believe that it's been achieved and that we just have to continue doing what we're doing. No, there are many children and young people who have no access to education. And now, during this pandemic, we've seen this even more clearly. We could give, each of our congregations could give examples of schools who have not been able to teach for months because the kids have no computer, they don't have a cell phone, they have nothing. We cannot even do it virtually. So those who suffer most from this lack of right of education are those. So we have to offer and contribute responses, perhaps that do not immediately solve the problem, but that work to build this right to education. So I think that is the contribution that we could give. Thank you. Thank you, Pedro. Commitment and quality. Important points. I think that the right to education is essential because it is one of the objectives also for the 2030 agenda. The education is the foundation, not just for the future, but also for the present. Thank you. The word goes to Sister Sacramento. Microphone. Thank you. As I was thinking about this, I was saying that we are a small congregation, therefore our contribution is small, but it's significant. I am someone who's convinced of the great strength that there is in the small, because the small things brings seeds for something larger. Well, firstly, I was struck by this call from the Pope to rebuild this back when he speaks of building an educational village, and he sets 3 steps that lead us to that village. The first one is the courage to put the persons at the center. Secondly, use all the resources of creativity. And the third, to put the person at the service of society. I think that here, with our humanity, we also make a contribution to this call from the Pope. Our founder, a Piarist, therefore a brother of Father Pedro, when he spoke of education, he said that it was awakening sleeping skills to bring out the beauty of the person, and that is a means to renew for a better society. Therefore, I think that as a congregation, we emphasize these intuitions and dreams that the Pope speaks of, to put the person at the center and to allow her to discover the best in him or her, and to come to more concrete terms. As an institute, our starting point was promoting an awareness of the entire educational community in light of this call from the Pope. We think it is important to feel involved, and I think that feeling involved in this response, in the response to this call, requires firstly the deep conviction that the pact is possible, that it is possible to rebuild this pact. And on the other hand, the conviction that you need the contribution of everyone for this, as small as it is. We all remember that phrase of Eduardo Galeano, very small things in the small places by small people who are really capable of changing the world, with the contribution each person based on what we can give. The Institute is in the process of preparing for the chapter, and the reflection for the chapter to drive to update the first intuitions of the founder and to respond to the challenges we face today based from our educational mission is this global educational pact. The Institute right now is in a process of reflection at the local level. So all of that at the local level will reach the institutional level, so that amongst all of us, we can design these lines to allow us to contribute to this call. I think that our contribution will also be given because we're already implementing models and methodologies that guide the way through the values, intuitions, and the calls issued by the pact, implementing simple projects with clear and concrete educational proposals at the level of the Institute, and also perhaps drafting a project of interiority, the same project at the Institute level, that undoubtedly expects, demands to enable this connection of the person with his or herself in this world where we're all so connected toward the inside. And also by establishing small educational alliances at the level of local communities. These are small signs, but that are actually being given. Also, we began a small project which we call the dynamic of the three C's: know, contemplate, and care, that once aims at helping the students in understanding responsible consumption, caring for ourselves and the common home. And I think we can also contribute networking within our own congregation by forming teams, working groups about different topics. There's also something that I think we contribute as a congregation, and I'm sure we all feel united to others, is the institutional bet for something that the Pope is also asking for, that is giving a voice to the girls and the women, especially in some contexts when this is denied in different ways. Well, for us, this call of the Pope is as rediscovering the dream of our founder to uh, integrate the woman, with her own dignity. Another contribution is the possibility to strengthen vocation and educational passion for educator. We have to really be attentive to the formation of the educators with a plan, an institutional formation plan. And lastly, the Pope in the recent meeting for this global educational pact prepared by the UISG and USG meeting, was stating that they were summarizing the execution of the pump on three lines: center, welcome, and involve. I think that we, as an institution, were born to search, to go out to the encounter, to make, to place the other one at the center. We were born to welcome and accompany. I think that this summary that the Pope has offered is a great gift for us. It is a gift because it allows us to accept this call based on the core of our identity, our educational being. So it makes us be more in line with this call from the Pope to center, welcome, and involve. Our way of being involved is based on that accompaniment that is close, simple, establishing a relationship that is also empathetic. Thank you so much. Thank you, sister. Very important to emphasize the fact of the assistance of the accompaniment of particularly women and girls, because in some places they are unprivileged, and the project SER being, it is typical of Catholic education. There's an importance of the interior world. You used the word pact and alliance and village many times. A sister in the chat said that the image of the village is a circular image that is participative and welcoming, where there is a space for everyone. Thank you, Ernesto, and
Muchas gracias.
your word. Thank
Bueno,
you.
yo espero que el primer aporte de nuestra
I
congregación
hope that the first
sea precisamente
contribution
esa
of our
decisión
congregation is to be
de
more
la necesidad
aware
de caminar
of our need
en
to
una
walk
dirección
together in
de
the
crear
direction
una
of
sociedad más humana,
co-creating a society that is more
que tanto esfuerzo
humanized and
nuestros
humanizing.
hermanos
Educators,
maristas,
brothers, and many
los
lay people,
llamados maristas de Champañá,
which
presentes en los cinco
that
continentes,
we call
nos
the Marists
involucren
of Champagne, present in all the continents, should
globalmente.
feel increasingly a part of this global movement, and along with other
Congregaciones religiosas.
congregations and religious institutions.
Hace unos días en el taller hubo al menos
A few days ago, there were at least 6 or 7 brothers from our general house that participated to raise this awareness. I can say that we are on our way. We are building international collaborative networks of schools, of universities, of solidarity, networks of publishing, youth ministry, and volunteer service. And this is creating a synergy. We've also initiated alliances and projects with other institutions, specifically with the LaSalle brothers, for instance, at both at the general level and at the level of provinces, and also with the project Solidarity with South Sudan. We have 2 brothers there. At the level of the internal network that we are building, we want to launch a platform to generate exchanges and information. On the other hand, the Instrumento Labore speaks of recognizing the other as different from ourselves, but not as a threat to our identity, rather as a companion on the journey. And I'd like to point out 2 things. I think we have done an important journey among brothers, sisters, and lay people who are educators in the Institute, committing increasingly committed to the different levels of leadership and responsibility, welcoming the gift of the lay marist vocation, opening pathways to to be bound. We've generated international communities of brothers and lay people at the service of the mission. And all of this is like a new drive, a new strength that comes from the Institute. With regard to the interreligious relation, we have educational works in countries where this dialogue of communion and fraternity is progressively increasing, where we search and in a social integration in that religious world. We also want to develop formation programs for leadership and a key of service. We call this leadership that is in service and prophetic based on a Marian spirit because we're a congregation inspired by Mary. The Pope speaks of a global village of education. We've been promoting over the last few years the global Marist family where we can all feel part of the whole, therefore co-responsible for the other parts. And you know that this is not an easy thing to achieve. The document speaks of the care for interiority, the caring for our relation with others, the care for the environment. The Institute has been developing programs about education for interiority and spirituality, programs that allow students to know themselves better, to perceive what's within them, and generate better relationships of friendship with others. And of course, the respect for the environment. We are launching a project that will be motivated from the educational network. How much synergy could we create if we come together in this effort? The Pope also says that educating requires to establish a loyal dialogue with the young. So we think that youth ministry is a privileged space for this. We've also launched a project, a digital platform that is entitled Stand Up, Give Your Opinion, and Participate. It is a place for encounter to listen to the young, where we especially want to promote the defense of the human rights of young people. Our project Horizons about a transformational education in some countries of Africa, may all children have the same opportunity to access education. We are particularly seeking to reintegrate girls to the school environment, and the project aims at forming educators. Lastly, the challenge to go beyond the borders, increasingly connecting at the intercongregational level with and also with government organizations, including the educational system. And we know that this is very difficult in many countries. The Global Educational Pact aims at all of this and will require new efforts in dialogue, connection, and participation, and of course, the transformation. At this time, we perhaps experience more questions than answers. Let's search together. Only together can we make this dream something concrete. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ernesto, for your rich words, for your projects, and based on and from the perspective of a lay charism, that seems very important to co-create this process, this transformation of reality, which can only be achieved together. There is a richness in the chat that I cannot read because I'm listening to you, but there's incredible richness. Thank you, Juan Antonio, for sharing your presentation. They were asking for it. We're going to publish that as well. There's a richness of experiences and keywords. I don't know whether Emily, we don't have a percentage at UISG yet, but there's a significant percentage of the number of congregations, male and female, that are involved in education. This is a movement that, I mean, if we really manage to work together, we can truly change reality, as Pope Francis invites us to through with these three last encyclical letters. So thank you, Ernesto. Last but not least, Yvonne Sister Yvonne, with her perfect Spanish, I would like to speak it as you do. You have the floor, Yvonne.
El micrófono.
Microphone, please.
Entonces, también para nosotras como
For
instituto
us,
es
as well as an institute,
estamos siempre
we are,
desde los inicios, estamos
since the beginning, we've
sensibilizadas
always been
no se hablaba de pacto
aware.
educativo
We did
global,
not
pero
speak of global
siempre en
educational
el
pact,
carisma
but
salesiano
in the Salesian charism,
la educación juntos ha sido una cosa
education together
importante
has
porque
always been something important,
desde los inicios no se ha podido
because
nunca
since
pensar
the
a la
beginning
educación
we
sin
could
pensar a una
never
comunidad, sin
think
pensar
of
a
education
una
without
casa en donde se
thinking
educa.
of
Pienso
a
que en este
house where you
momento
educate.
estábamos y estamos
I think
preparando
that
nuestro
at this
capítulo
time
general,
we
que
were
no sabemos
preparing our
cuándo se
general
logrará
chapter. We don't know
celebrarlo, pero
when that will be held, but
el tema que estamos preparando es
the topic
comunidades
that we are
generadores de
developing
vida
is
en el
communities
corazón de
that
la
generate life
contemporaneidad. Y
in
eso
the
para
at the
nosotras
heart of contemporary
es sobre
times, and
todo
this is
comunidades generadoras de
especially
vida a
communities that
través de la
generate life
educación de
through
los niños y
the
jóvenes.
education of
El ir
children and young
despertando
people,
vida, el ir compartiendo
awakening
vida para
life
que
and
se
sharing
pueda
life
compartirla
in
en
order
círculos
to
concéntricos cada vez más
share in concentric
amplios en todo
circles that
el
are
mundo.
increasingly broader throughout the world.
Pacto educativo global
The
también
Global
para
Educational
nosotras
Pact
nos invita a ir
invites
compartiendo
us
el carisma
to
educativo
share the
cada vez más
educational
con
charism
laicos,
more and more
laicas, con los
with
jóvenes
lay
mismos,
people, the same young
con las
people,
exalumnas, los exalumnos,
the alumni,
el favorecer la formación de
to
educadores y
favor
una
and
formación
promote the
juntos y
formation of
juntas con
educator, a
educadores.
formation that is done together,
Ir preparando
and
multiplicadores en la
preparing
educación.
multipliers in the
Y
education,
también la pasión para
and
crear
also the
redes.
passion to create networks.
Hemos hablado mucho de
We've
redes
talked
en esta
about
tarde.
networks this afternoon,
Desde ser un instituto internacional
from
presente en los
being
5
an
continentes,
international institute present in the
sentimos la
5
llamada
continents.
a
We
crear las
feel the
condiciones
call to
para la formación de
create
jóvenes en
conditions
la
for the
fraternidad
formation of young
universal y
people
en
in
la
universal
solidaridad mundial,
fraternity and world solidarity,
activando concretamente redes
concretely
a nivel mundial.
activating networks at the world level.
Ya en el instituto, a través
In
de
the
los
institute, through
92 países donde estamos presentes,
in the 92
pero
countries where we
también
are,
con las otras
but also
congregaciones,
with the other
con el
congregations,
compartir los carismas.
sharing charisms.
Tenemos que encontrar la modalidad
We
para
have to find
activar
the way
estas
to activate
redes.
these networks.
Pero creo que es muy importante
But I think it
porque
is
es un signo
very
de
important
formar
because
concretamente a esta
it is a
sensibilidad
sign
de formar a
to
ciudadanos
concretely form
mundiales,
for this
ciudadanos
awareness to
con una
form
visión amplia
world
del mundo.
citizens with a broad view of the
Dejarnos
world,
interpelar por la promoción de niños y
to
jóvenes
allow
más
ourselves to
pobres
be challenged
con la convicción
in the
que Don Bosco
promotion
había tenido
of
desde el
poor
inicio.
children
Él
and young
era
people with the
convencido que
conviction of Don
es
Bosco.
desde la
He was
educación de
convinced that
los
it
niños y
was
jóvenes
based
más pobres
on
que
the
se
education
puede
of the poor
transformar
children
la
that you can
sociedad.
transform
Y
society.
creo que eso es una realidad
And I think
hoy.
that is a reality
Pero
today.
vivirlo en un
But
contexto en
living
cui los
this
desafíos de la
in a
pobreza que está
context
creciendo cada vez más en todo el
with
mundo
the challenges
es
of
siempre más
poverty that is
grande.
increasing
Eso
throughout the
pide
world,
creatividad
this
para
requires
encontrar las soluciones,
creativity
los medios
in order
para
to find the
realizarlo.
solutions and the means to
El
achieve this.
trabajo en el derecho a la
The
educación en
work
todo el mundo ha
for the
sido
right to
también
education
subrayado
throughout the world was
antes
also emphasized before.
a través de de
through
la nuestra oficina de los derechos
our
humanos que
Office
tenemos
for
en
Human
Ginebra, que
Rights in Geneva,
trabaja directamente con el Consejo,
that
con la
directly
ONU,
works with the
y
UN,
sobre todo pensando en el derecho a la educación de las
especially
jóvenes.
thinking about
En
the
muchas
right to
partes del
education of
mundo, la
young
educación de
women.
las niñas y jóvenes
In many
hoy,
parts of the world,
alguien lo ha
the
dicho también
education
antes,
of young
es
women
muy dejado.
is
Lo
very
sentimos como una gran
neglected, and we feel
responsabilidad.
this as a great
Más
responsibility. But
esta importancia es cada vez
this
más fuerte
is
porque
increasingly
se ve
important
cambios en este momento que
because
a la
we
vez
see
de ser un
changes at this
progreso
time.
es un
Instead
retroceder
of being
por problemas de pobreza,
a
por
step forward, it is a step
diferentes
backward because
situaciones.
of situations of poverty in different
La,
situations.
En este momento, a partir de la pandemia en todo el mundo, nos
At this
sentimos
time,
también
because of the
obligadas a
pandemic throughout the
interrogarnos
world,
sobre
we
nuestras
feel
presencias y obras.
compelled to question ourselves about our presence and
¿Cómo
works.
hay que seguir
How
en
must
este mundo
we
que cambia?
continue going forward in this
Puede ser
changing
que
world?
la educación la tendremos que
Perhaps
vivir en
we're going
situaciones,
to have to
en
experience
instituciones
education in the
cambiadas,
situations and
pero
institutions
hay que
that are
inventarlo.
changing, but we have to invent them.
Y eso nos pide mucha creatividad para
That
ir
requires a lot
buscando
of
las
creativity,
oportunidades que este momento
seeking
nos
for
ofrece.
the opportunities
Eh,
offered at this
Se ha
time.
hablado de las desigualdades que en este
We've
momento,
talked about the
que siempre hay, pero
inequalities
que en este momento,
that have always
con
existed, but at
la
this time,
dificultad de la pandemia,
with
se
in
ha
light of the
crecido y se ha
difficulty
hecho
of the
ver,
pandemic, it has
conocer
increased
en todo el mundo.
and it's revealed
Y
itself
entonces,
throughout the world.
para nosotras es
So
una, a nivel mundial,
at
es
the
una búsqueda
at
cómo
the
luchar
world
contra
level, it
estas
is a
desigualdades,
search for
qué
us. It is
proponer,
we have
qué
to try
inventar.
to find
Y
how we
para
can fight
eso
these inequalities.
es
What can
que
we
hay que
propose? What
también
can we
encontrar las
invent? We
soluciones
have to
juntas. Creo
find a
que
solution
nadie puede
together.
encontrar las
I think that
soluciones
nobody can
solos,
find
¿no? Ni una
solutions
congregación sola,
alone, not one
ni una
congregation,
comunidad sola.
nor a
También
community by itself.
las soluciones son varias
There are
según de los
several
contextos.
solutions based on
Hay
the
que ir
context. We
estudiando
have
en todos los
to
lugares, no
study
solo en cada nación, sino en
everywhere,
cada
not just
provincia,
in
incluso
every
en
country,
cada
rather
ciudad
in
y
every
pueblo,
province,
para
town,
encontrar la
city,
forma
in order
de
to find a
expresar
way
una respuesta para responder a
to
los llamados
express
que surgen de la
a
realidad local.
response, to respond to the calls that are
Juntos y
emerging at the
juntas
local level.
debemos
Together,
tratar de
we
releer el
must try
carisma a
to
la luz de las nuevas
review,
situaciones.
reread the charism
Luego de
in new
corresponde a cada
situations.
realidad identificar
Then
la que
each
más se
reality must
adapta a las
identify
condiciones
the one that
locales
is more
y lograr expresar el compromiso
adjusted to the local
con la
situation and
educación
achieve a
evangelizadora,
commitment
que
to
también
the
para
evangelizing
abrirse
education,
a la
or
dimensión
also to
intercultural e
open up
interreligiosa
to
de
the
la realidad
intercultural and
humana.
interreligious dimension
Pienso
of
que
human
son
reality.
elementos
I think
importantes
that
para
these are
nosotras.
important elements, and
Queremos
for
también
us,
potenciar la
we want
contribución
to
de
strengthen
nuestra Pontificia Facultad de Ciencias
the
de la Educación
contribution of our
Auxilium de
Pontifical
Roma,
Faculty of
que forma
Science
a
in Rome
futuros y
that
futuras educadores, como otras
forms future
instituciones
educators,
superiores
just as other higher
presentes en
educational
diferentes
centers that are
partes del
present in
mundo
different parts
y
of
que
the
a través de
world,
las ciencias de la educación
which through
forman a
the
educadores,
science of education forms
buscando
educators,
las,
seeking
las, la respuesta a los nuevos
seeking
desafíos de las
responses to
ciencias de
the
la
new
educación en este momento.
challenges in education at this time.
Agradezco
I
por
am
este
thankful
compartir,
for
por
this
la
sharing,
riqueza de
for the richness
las contribuciones.
of all the
Podemos
contributions.
esperar seguir
we can
cada vez más
hope
reflexionando,
to
trabajando
continue reflecting
juntos
more and more,
para este
as
Pacto
well
Global de
as
la
working
Educación.
together for this
Gracias.
global pact for education. Thank you so much. I was impressed by this theme of your chapter, to be generators, to generate. This seems like a theme that is recurring. The Pope speaks of a world that generates, that brings life. I think that this is a vocation of all of us who are here at this time. Allow our life to blossom and allow other lives to blossom. I think this is the core of education. Thank you. Thank you all. Well, we've talked a lot, we shared a lot. I think there's a lot to work at. As a comment said, yes, everything is great, but the difficulty is then to make it become flesh, to make it become everyday life. But I think that the congregations involved in education experience this on a daily basis. During this time of preparation, we also interviewed general superiors of different languages, listening to their realities, and we perceive the daily commitment, also in the acceptance of all the challenges, especially in the most difficult realities. Here we are 300 people connected. In some places it is not possible to connect. So the invitation is to be very creative. I think we have another pact that is being drafted on the chat with a lot of richness, proposals in different languages. There are many words that are emerging, such as empower. The richness is incredible. We have time, I wouldn't say questions because we have no time for replies. But if anybody wants to share something that is very concrete, perhaps an experience, but very briefly, you know that you can raise your hand and I can give you the floor if you so desire. Otherwise, we continue benefiting from the richness on the chat. There is, if you open up the participants list, there's a button that allows you to raise your hand, and I can see that on the participants list to give you the floor. Or you can also send me a message in the chat and I can help you. Here we see Luis Fernando. Sorry, can you unmute your microphone? Thank you. I'm Luis Fernando, a Jesuit. I'm working in Peru presently. Thank you for the beautiful contributions, the sharing. What I'd like to know is I participated to the seminar and now this webinar. How is there a website where that we can turn to stay in touch with these experiences that are being presented? For instance, the seminar was very large. We couldn't exchange and share addresses, names, but if you could establish a part, something in your website to then search for these contact information later. Thank you. I think this is the task of the Education Commission of USG and UISG to help maintain this relationship, but it will then lead to this need to continue working on this pact throughout the year. We have two more contributions and then we'll have to stop. We have Kathy. Good morning in Mexico. Good afternoon in Rome. I think we could benefit from the organizations we already have. So, for example, OIEC, CIEC in Latin America, or I don't know what it's called in other countries. or also through UISG, the SEER here in Mexico. I think that everyone could turn to his or her organization and download that information and create a network. It's best to not invent another channel, but perhaps take advantage of the channels that already exist. Thank you, sister, brother Eric.
You can unmute your microphone. Para las personas que hablan inglés, español, pueden
For
seleccionar.
those who speak Spanish, you can select the translation at the bottom of your screen.
You can unmute your microphone now. Brother, you have the flow. Okay, I think we. Brother. Okay. Here we go. Brother, you have the flow. You have to unmute your microphone. Okay. He didn't want. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay. Creo que tenemos que ir cerrando.
I think we have to start bringing this to a close, and we're going to do it in the following manner. Very quickly with great speed, because I want to give the floor to Sister Yolanda Kafka, the president of UISG. She's an expert in education as well because of the engagement of her congregation, the Claretian Sisters. I want her to give some closing words, but I want to give the floor to all the speakers, starting with Juan Antonio. Very briefly, simply share one dream, one step that we can take tomorrow, or even as soon as we finish this meeting, something very concrete, a dream that is practical, that is flesh. So Juan Antonio begins, and then the others, Pedro Sacramento, etc. But very quickly, please. Briefly, I would say that the genius is collective, and I would think about building this pact from the bottom, reflecting from each classroom, each school, the group of schools within the city, to be able to get out of our four walls and go meet with the other Catholic school that's across the street or 2 blocks away, public school, and offer them to dream of a new education, to generate a city that educates, and from there work our way up. Thank you, Pedro. A very concrete dream that all the young people and all the religious that sign up for this fascinating task can dream with this pact, commit to it, and commit to build it together with as many people from different vacations. The translator is going to kill Pedro, as Patricia says. Among all, we should generate the conviction that this is possible and that together we can. United we can. Well, strong and short and strong. Ernesto, to me, it's about believing that we are active agents, that we rely on that inspiration with our founders, and that it is possible to achieve it if we do it together. We cannot do it alone. Thank you, Ernesto. Last but not least, Yvonne. Infect with love for education, create educational environments where there's joy and trust, and create networks as big as possible. Thank you so much. So much wisdom, so much richness. I'd like to create a mosaic of all the generative words we've shared during these 2 hours. Now we continue with generative words with Sister Yolanda Kafka, who will help us close but not close this meeting. Yolanda, you have the floor.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. La verdad,
Good afternoon.
gustado mucho
I really enjoyed
estas palabras generativas.
listening to these generative words.
Si aquí
Certainly,
personas
if
que colaboramos, que estamos
the people who are here are people who collaborate, who are directly or indirectly involved in the educational field, this is a guarantee. The word passion for educating, pronounced by Mother Yvonne, certainly resonated, although it was not explicitly expressed by every person. So thank you very much to Juan Antonio Sacramento, Pedro, Iván, Ernesto for your sharing
desde diferentes ángulos
from different angles, for sharing this passion.
la aldea de
I think that the village of education, although
imaginamos
we
manera global
imagine it at the global level, I think it begins in the small corners, as Sacramento said, with little gestures, small groups.
nosotros los
And I think that we, the religious, and all those who walk with us
carismas
from our charisms, can also be like a circle, not a closed circle, a circle in a village.
y respondiendo
I think that in this context, and as we respond to the question of Brother Eric, I believe that the commission of the two union, USG and UISG,
se pondrá también
will
en reconstruir el
start rebuilding, will engage in this rebuilding of the global pact, this pact to support education and its implications in the life of the congregations, its projections. It would be like a rethinking together
esta comisión
the reach, the scope of this commission, which is the most immediate accompaniment for this task.
me gustaba la palabra
I appreciated also the title of the book, Lights for This Journey.
experiencias concretas
These are concrete experiences
pues así podemos alcanzar
so that
otro trozo
we can manage to
gracias
journey through another bit.
todos esos días que han sido
So thank you for all these days that were intense, and I hope they lead to a fruitful growth. And I would like for this to serve as a bridge for those who could not participate, so they may get to be familiar with the access to this forum, so they can drink from this well, because these dynamics and these conferences today will be available, and others may gain access to all this information. So thank you very much. Thank you, Patricia, for animating, for very competently animating today's meeting, and the translators and all the work of the people who are not visible and who are helping us on this process. Thank you so much. Thank you. I also bring forth Emily, sorry, but I wanted to close this meeting with a dream and ask you for this dream, a dream that you have for education. Both of you, you both work and you have worked a lot in this area. A dream that opens the door, that lets us out, that encourages us.
Yolanta?
El mío.
Oh, mine? Oh, shall we have to start with mine? My dream, well, when Patricia invited us to dream at this time, I was seeing like a hand, and the hand is not the hand of a person. There are several fingers and they support something, they hold something. It is a dream for a communion that is increasingly visible, not just as a beginning or but that is visualized in mutual collaboration. Everybody has talked about this as a very strong expression and reciprocity. So a dream so that from there, families, children, and those who have no access to education can drink from there. So we may embrace everyone. A hand that is full. My dream is connected to what we were talking about, alliances. I think that at this time, I too read that comment on the chat about someone saying, very beautiful, but tomorrow we'll all be shut again in our homes. Maybe, but really many things are happening, and we've heard of many positive experiences from those who have participated, and that gives me great hope. And I think we are on our way and on the right path. Perhaps we are already sufficiently vulnerable and poor in our congregations so as to experience the need that we have of each other. Perhaps in the past we were too powerful, too strong, but now that we feel weak, we feel that we have to continue on this path. Not too long ago, during a webinar we organized about the general chapter, somebody launched an idea saying we need something like a general chapter of the entire religious life. Okay. Well, who knows? Who knows if a synodal path can happen in the future, not just for education, but as consecrated life in general. A synodal path is what the Pope is inviting us to. So that too is a dream. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you all, the participants, and especially to Juan Antonio for organizing almost everything. I haven't done much. I've just accompanied you. Thank you, Pedro, Sacramento, Ernesto, Ivan, for sharing your wisdom, your richness. And I hope that the invitation is now to close and do something, because we have to implement this pact. And do not forget that we have the other invitation from Pope Francis about economy for a sustainable and humanizing economy, always based on the poor. And well, let's now open all the microphones. Thank you, Florence, who's behind the scene, Mary Lou, who helped us communicate, and now we unmute all our microphones to say hello and goodbye to each other. Bye-bye.
Bye, bye.
Gracias.
Niños madrileños.
Gracias.
Ivonne,
Gracias,
un abbraccio grande, Ivonne.
Ivonne. Abrazo.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Hasta luego.
Molto bello.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Dios, gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you.
Have a nice
Muchas
day.
gracias. Gracias, Madre Ivonne. Thank you.
Gracias, Iván.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Take care.
Gracias, Patricia.
Thank you.